Good morning or good afternoon, Mary. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Glauber. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to be talking with you today. Yeah, so thank you.
It's my pleasure. Look, we haven't met before. We were introduced by one of my great friend Tejas.
Great.
So I don't know much about you, and we're gonna start there. I want to know more about you, but I hope you don't mind. I put the title of the episode on Twitter: Java and Jesus.
Oh,
So
good.
hopefully those are the things that we can talk about. I saw in your profile you're all about Java, right?
Yeah, well, kind of. That's how I kind of
Kind of
was more focusing on, and now kind of more into AI, other things. And I'm
AI.
mostly a polyglot, I'd say. But Java is all good. I'm Java champion too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You are the president of the Chicago Java Users Group.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, that's right. But I
And
can tell you a little bit, or should I tell you a little bit after
yeah,
you?
that, I was just tell
Okay.
us. I was getting there. Tell us more about. We want to hear from you about yourself. You're the only one that can do justice to yourself. So let's do it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem. I just thought you were doing introduction. I don't want to interrupt while you're doing the short version
No.
and then I go into the longer. Okay, so just to give some background, I'm sure I mean not everybody is involved with the Java ecosystem or the community. So for me, I started off actually working with C and Unix in the 90s. My background, I have a math and computer science background. So I got my degree. It's actually in Massachusetts in a small college in western part of Massachusetts called Springfield College, and math and computer science. And then I came out at the time in the 90s, early 90s, and it was all about Unix and C. So that's what I started working with. And then slowly Java came into being and 95, right? 95, 96 timeframe. So I didn't start with that right away, but there was a chance too. I was working with it. Then I joined Sybase, this company you might have heard of too, database.
Yes.
Everybody knows it's Sybase. But I was actually with the Power Builder side. So they acquired Power Builder, and then there was a chance too for me to support. They also got into Java with the Java spec, and there were people involved with the Java community process, the JCP now, all the community process, working with Enterprise Java Beans, EJB. Anyway, so I got a chance to do that because they wanted to also support Power Builder as native component in their at the time they call it Java 2 EE Enterprise Edition.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yes,
remember.
perfect.
We
Everybody
talk. We
remembers.
talk. We talk a lot with a lot of young people in this podcast. But
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm from before the 2000s. Right. I
Yeah.
started my career around the year 2000, so I think you got a
Oh,
little bit of a
okay.
head start on me. But I recognize all of the names in your introduction.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay, cool. Yeah. So just to give folks a bit of a background. So yeah, anyway, but to me, I think with computer, this field, every day is a new day. There's no
yeah.
history behind everything you do. But in any event, that's how I got into Java. And then slowly too, then I got into more application development. And then because initially I was doing more product server side development, server, actually J2EE server development, and then work with more application, Java application, and then of course the open source ecosystem, the DevOps, the cloud, all these things is all roll into everything, right, in today's world. So that's how
Mhm.
I got into Java. And then after working for a while, I felt kind of something is missing. I didn't know what it was. I was kind of shy too in the beginning. I think I was just among other folks, especially developers tend to be more into themselves. I don't want to make it like a bad thing, but more introvert, right? That kind of personality. I have that
Mhm.
in me too, I have to say. I don't think I'm 100% extrovert or introvert, but I think the extrovert side of me must be knocking on the door, kind of making me kind of
Yeah.
go do something, but I didn't know. But at the time too, because the timing was right. My daughter was getting older, and then I had more time. So I said, "Oh, let me join Java users group." And then I was already in Chicago. Then I thought, let me join them. And the more I went there, and I was enjoying the community so much. Right, every time you
Mhm.
talk with people, and just I love the technology exchange. And so that's how I got involved with the Java users group. And then they started asking me, would you like to help? And so it became a natural thing. So I thought, oh, why not? Let me help. And without even knowing, because of that, and it led me to my career as a developer advocate, because then IBM was looking
Yeah.
to build Java advocacy. So that's how I happened. 2018, that's when I joined IBM as Java developer advocate. And then I've been doing advocacies, for the past 6 years, and now I'm actually AI practice lead. But just to kind of not get into all the details, but I've been doing advocacy. So this is my seventh year doing it, although I'm also with a consulting firm. So I'm also helping out with building up an AI practice right now. So it's kind of a hybrid role. But I kind of found myself, I actually really like this aspect of community outreach and advocacy. I find that I'm finally, have found the area that I enjoy so much, right? It becomes kind of natural to me. And that's how it led to me speaking more and more, like in the public
Yeah.
too. So yeah,
Were you an introvert kid or an extrovert kid? Or
it's kind of funny. I don't know. I
yeah.
feel like I'm a blend of different ones. I have to tell you, because I was also very much into music. I learned piano. My
Hmm.
mom was music very much, and my dad too was more hobbyist, and he used to play the
Hmm.
violin. So I grew up listening to music all the time. There's always some music around, in classical music as well, mostly. And so I learned piano and everything, and then I joined the choir too. So I sang in choir. And then not only that, at the same time, I actually like sports too, and actually I excel in it too. I was in my high
Yeah.
school, I was running track, and so I think I'm kind of a weird blend, of not completely introvert, not quite extrovert, but something about me. Even took me a while to find myself. Who am I? What camp am I on? But I realized I have both sides. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just all depends. Yeah. So.
That is a rare blend, but it's funny because people think that people are introverts or people are extroverts.
Yeah.
I will die on this hill. You can learn to be an extrovert because I did. I was always a very introvert kid.
Oh. Okay.
Like I didn't have any friends and etc. I shared this a little bit about me when I had an episode about me. Kent was the
Uh-huh.
interviewer, but like I had a very a childhood in which like I just didn't have friends, right? For
Oh.
for a variety of reasons, but one of them, I think at least 20% of that is that just I was not an extrovert. I mean, I wanted to be on my shell.
Mm.
But at some point, I just learn, and it starts as an act, but then it becomes a part of yourself. And today, I talk a lot, and here I am on
Yeah. I was
like
going to
hosting a podcast. But
yeah.
it's not that there is anything inherently better.
Yeah.
Uh, I agree with you. Like you can be an introvert, it doesn't mean that you have to change.
That's right.
But I don't actually mean I don't think it is impossible to change because I did. Again, I was a totally
Yeah.
100%, 110% introvert kid, and now I'm
Yeah.
not. The thing is that by the end of the day, you drain because if you are an extrovert, it
Mhm.
comes naturally to you. I mean, you enjoy it. I mean, you
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
If I go to a conference and I'm traveling to one tomorrow,
Yeah.
but by the end of the day, I just need to go to my room and
Yeah.
decompress. I mean, I can't.
Yeah.
It's
Me
a
too.
lot of people, but I
Yeah.
can I can be an extrovert. That's fine. Just-
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I think I'm the same too. Yeah. I
okay.
love going to conferences, but I need the evening or whatever, that one, part of my day, I need to be all quiet and just by myself and just, like you said, decompress and just kind of, yeah, let things soak in or just bounce back, so to speak. Yeah. I think that's what I'm too. So yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Awesome. And where did you grow up? Because you mentioned your father, your mother. Where?
Yeah, I actually was born in Hong Kong, and then I grew
Hong
up
Kong.
there, and then yeah, in Hong Kong. So yeah, so I have a very Catholic upbringing. Now that I know your theme of your
Yeah.
podcast is really about Jesus and about, and it's interesting. My mom
Well,
was
it's not.
actually
It's not. I didn't want it to be about Jesus. Just a correction here. I wanted to be
okay.
about religion, and I wanted to
Okay,
have a space for people from other religions to come as well.
sure.
I also, but the thing is, like as a Christian, right?
Mhm.
Just more naturally, my network
Yeah.
is like that, and we're also in the West where most people are like that. But I've been inviting Dev. I don't know if Dev is watching now. He shows up every now and then, but
Oh,
he has an Hindu background. And look, I
oh,
come on in. I mean, I wanted to have those conversations, but
yeah.
I'm not here to preach, but Jesus is real. He's
Yeah.
God,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Yes.
maybe people don't feel at ease, but here we are.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Java and Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah, yeah, totally. But yeah, so okay, so going back my background, I grew up in Hong Kong. I went to Catholic school too, and it's just, I think it's natural. My mom was Catholic school at the time, teaching Catholic school, but she actually came from a Protestant background. But it's also very interesting because of her Protestant roots, and then she converted to Catholicism when she was in college, and so after it was in Taiwan when she did that, and she actually this at the school there was American missionary, the Jesuits was there on campus, and then she got in touch with Father Murphy at that time, and so had conversation. She asked a lot of questions, and it's just based on like from her friends, yeah, account, right, telling
Hmm.
me about what happened. My mom and some of her friends were curious, and so my mom found it appealing, and then she eventually converted to Catholicism. But she still, when she was living, she passed away last year, but when she was
Oh,
living
I'm
she was
sorry.
still, oh yeah, it's okay, it's because you're 88 years old. Anyway, so we grew up, was interesting, mostly always Catholics. She sent us to Catholic school, and then I grew up and do all this stuff. And anyway, but she also, because of her friends too, still, like my grandparents, they were Protestant Christian, so she
What
also
does
was.
it mean? What does it mean to be a Protestant in Hong Kong? I mean, what are the denominations that
Oh
are
yeah, in
more
Hong Kong.
influential? Yeah.
Sure, sure. I think interestingly, in Hong Kong, I say if it's called Christians, if you count both
Hmm.
Catholics and Christian and Protestants, there would be more Protestants than there are
Yeah,
for
but
Catholics.
but for example, I think in the US there are very specific brands of Protestantism that
Oh,
took root. There are things like very American, like the Amish,
sure,
for example, that they're from Switzerland, but like
sure.
mostly in American these days. So when you talk about Protestants in Hong Kong,
Sure.
what kind of Protestants are
Mm,
usually
sure.
there? Is it
I,
very
I
spread, or is
think,
there a particular? Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of widespread. I'm not
Hmm.
like, I haven't done research, but I know that just from friends and from, the schools that are running, being run by different missionaries group. I'd say there are the Baptists, the Methodists,
Hmm.
the Lutherans, the same like Presbyterians, just like the
Hmm.
U.S. There are also Mormons too, and then there are also others
Well,
too. I'd say it's a
I will be
variety.
surprised. I will be surprised if there is any place that there are not Mormons. Right,
Oh,
they're
I
everywhere.
know,
Just.
which is true. They are everywhere. Yeah, yeah. So I think there are just all kinds, and evangelicals too. Like
Hmm.
also they're the mega churches type too.
Hmm.
I think, but in terms of Christians population in Hong Kong, I think there are more Protestants than there are with Catholics.
Okay.
Catholics are a minority Christians. However, I do have to say too, because of the earlier days of all of the Catholic missionaries that came from Europe, from America. They built up schools and hospitals and things like that in Hong Kong, and so there actually are more Catholic schools in Hong Kong, and then a lot more people, even if they are not Christians too, with that background, they actually would go through like Catholic school, and it's very common too. There, people just want to send their kids to Catholic schools, get because they tend to be good, very good
They
schools,
tend
and
to be good.
kind of all of these things.
It's
So
a
yes,
theme. It's a theme that I've been hearing from a lot of people. I interviewed this
yeah,
lady from Pakistan. She said the
yeah,
same thing in Pakistan, that Catholic
yeah.
schools are the best, so people go to
That's
Catholic school.
that is, yeah.
I interviewed last week Mina from Egypt. He
Oh,
said the same thing.
mhm.
And I was born in Brazil, and my wife was not raised as a Catholic.
Okay.
Her mom was not a religious person, so she only got
Mhm.
baptized recently, prior to us
Oh,
getting married. But she went to
yeah.
Catholic school, right? So she was
Oh,
at least
okay.
familiar with the
Goodness.
iconography. But
Oh,
just in
that's,
here in Canada, I don't know how it is in the U.S., but Catholic schools are for Catholic people. That's
oh,
it. Like
that's it.
just
Oh,
although of course, what
yeah.
does it mean to be Catholic? It's a discussion that I always bring up with
Oh,
people. There's a lot
yeah.
of cultural Catholicism out there,
Oh, that's
but
right.
you have to be
Yeah.
baptized, and at least one of the parents have to be baptized. I can't just show up and
Oh,
require my kid to go to Catholic school.
Oh, okay, that's how it works in Canada. I think I don't
Yeah.
know about US. I think at least my parish, I think they accept kids that are may not necessarily be affiliated
Mhm.
or associated with any Catholics too. But yeah, but that's very interesting in Canada. That
That is the common thing. Like I think Canada
yeah.
is the uncommon thing in that regard,
Oh,
and
oh, it's uncommon. Okay.
it's interesting because the Catholic schools are free, and
Oh,
they're very
oh,
good, much
yeah.
better than the public schools.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why, because like because they're free, everybody would just
Oh,
come. So you know just you have to be.
oh,
It's a school for
got
that
it.
community, so you have to
Yeah.
be a member of that community.
Oh, okay, I see. But and you're right, in the US too, no, you don't get free Catholic education. So maybe that's why
Oh,
they
and
are open
there's
all
no
kinds.
free anything, which for good or bad. I mean, just yeah.
That's right. Yes. But anyway, so yeah, so that's me. I grew up in Hong Kong, kind of Catholic education, and kind of pretty much yeah. So yeah, but I do identify very well. I was felt kind of fortunate because it was my school was run by the Maryknoll sisters. They are based in New York, right? They're
Hmm.
just such a kind of vibrant group of women at that time. I mean, now I think back, right? I mean, at the time they were still young, not too old then, and they would be principals of the school and teachers, and all of these things, and they brought like a very fresh perspective to that contrast with the traditional Chinese culture, and so,
Hmm.
and they were kind of often being looked as though they were really liberal. I mean, in the sense that they're open-minded. They weren't wearing the habits and everything. So people were like associating them with, oh, they're kind of the open-minded group of people. But now I'm thinking back to like how much of an influence they had in my life because of their like their openness. Their
Hmm.
they also kind of made us speak English. So I think that's how I'm really grateful too that my language too in English is actually pretty good, I'd say, right, to start with. I mean,
Hmm.
so that's kind of, I'm really, really thankful. A lot of things, yeah. They might not be like academically like the top schools in Hong Kong at the time, but at least like they were kind of considered very good school, yeah, obviously, and
Hmm.
just got a good name to it too. And I realized they have done so much good stuff, yeah, back then, and I'm benefiting from it too. So I feel kind of forever like indebted to them for their education too. So like very loving people too. So yeah.
No, that's great. And now you got me curious. So you have a Catholic school that is open to non-Catholics as well. And do you pray? Does or is it just there's this understanding that the school is open for everybody, so there's a limit to which extent we're going to push Catholicism on those people? How is the day to day on a Catholic school
Mhm.
like that?
Yeah, in fact, that's what I thought was amazing. They never like push, so to speak, push it on those who were not Catholics, in fact. And
Hmm.
so let's say the Catholics were a minority. We had to go through, as going through school, your second grade, you have to prepare for communion, first Holy Communion, and then you go through confirmation when you're like first, well, for us in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
it was the equivalent of seventh grade kind of thing. So you had to go through all the preparations, and so they split up whenever we had like Bible, well, they call it religious ed class. And I think I forgot how it went. Maybe the non-Catholics, they would still have some basic training or kind of knowledge, more like
Hmm.
knowledge session for
Hmm.
them to learn about the Bible or learn about moral education thing. But they would split up the Catholics kids with the non-Catholics too. And I think that would be the extent to how much they have the kids do stuff. But of course, there, for example, Christmas, we had Christmas mass, or special occasion, there were school mass. Then everybody would come, and but they never kind of it came out as very pushy, like in
Hmm.
pushing the religion to the kids. But it's more like, okay, you are all, because you're in our school, you need to go to these occasions and mass or classes and just to learn about it. But you're not obligated to convert all that stuff. And no, I don't, they never did that. I think that might be the extent to how much they did it. But I didn't, and I never heard of any of my friends complaining, and neither did I hear maybe parents complaining at all. In fact, everybody was just open to it. Okay,
Yeah.
they understood they were in a Catholic school, so you have to follow the
Yeah.
customs and everything. So like that. So yeah. So yeah, that's how I recall it. So yeah. That's true.
I
Yeah. Did
I
you go
suppose a
through?
lot of kids. No, no, I did not go to a Catholic school at all. At all. As I say, I was the country I grew up in
Yeah.
is a nominally Catholic country, but I think most people there are not actually Catholic.
Oh,
I have this on me today. I
is it?
dispute it if you want. If you want to send a
Oh,
comment, if you are from Brazil or are familiar,
yeah.
and you want to argue about that, I'm happy to. But like, people will say they're Catholic because they're baptized, but that's
Yeah.
the extent of it. I mean, just
Oh,
I always there's always like, first of all, Brazil is known for Carnival,
yeah.
which is this giant open air orgy, the least Catholic
Oh,
thing you can think
that's
of, and
true.
then uh, you there's always this party in the New Year, and I always say, I always tell that story. So especially in the coast, and I
Yeah.
grew up in the coast. The way
Yeah.
people celebrate the New Year is that they all go to the beach, and
Yeah.
then they dig some holes in the sand and
Yeah.
put those statues of those African of this particular African goddess, and then you put flowers and alcohol and etc. And then you create those
Oh,
little boats and send it into the sea. And then you do all of that kind of stuff, and then the next day you go to mass. So I mean,
oh,
is this Catholic? I don't know.
yeah. That's right.
So
Yeah.
the environment that I grew up with was not a Catholic environment. It was a superstitious environment. It was
Oh,
like there was this idea of like this general theistic, like there is a God. Like the fight that I had with my parents, because when I became an atheist, right,
yeah.
was always about like there is this fuzzy nature of God, and you should ascribe to that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I look back in time, I mean, were my parents following Catholic doctrine? The answer is clearly no. For them, for
Yeah.
everybody in my family, for everybody in my circle, I did not go to a Catholic school, so I did not have a
Ah,
Catholic upbringing. I was
okay.
born in a Catholic
That's
cultural environment. That's the extent of it,
okay.
right? Just to
Okay. Yep. Yep. Now I got it. Okay. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nation that was Catholic in the past, I
Mm,
presume, and then you had the institution still has this presence, and it has
yeah.
some influence in the culture, but that's the
Oh,
extent of it.
okay. 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 Well, now I get a clearer understanding because even in my mind, I thought, oh, Brazil, you naturally thought
Yeah,
of because of
yeah. There's
the
this giant statue of Jesus in Rio,
yeah.
right?
That's
Just
why. So I thought it's everybody's mostly Catholic, but it's more culturally.
but
So
at 100%,
yeah. Yeah.
100%, and
Mm.
obviously, I'm not saying that there are no
Uh,
person in the country that are Catholic, but like, look, I
yeah.
had many friends, and like I
Oh.
never went to I never went to mass as a kid.
Oh.
The only time I started going to mass was right before my first communion,
Oh.
and
Okay.
so I just now let's take the kid to mass. I learned to pray, so I learned the prayers, and I still remember them
Oh.
in Portuguese.
Yeah.
And also because it's easy because I know them in English and Latin. So like I'm praying in English and Latin, I
Okay.
can kind of translate.
That's right.
But some words I don't quite remember, and I don't quite remember
Oh.
what word is used there. But
Okay.
totally cultural. I mean,
Yeah.
people are things that a lot of people in my family believed, reincarnation. People believe that you can
Oh, yeah.
ghost and a bunch of other
Yeah.
stuff that does
Obviously.
not fit
Yeah.
in Catholic theology, and this was
That's
widespread. Like, I don't
oh,
recall ever
oh.
meeting a person that was not like that, right? Just so
None of that. Oh, gotcha. Oh, gotcha. I see. I see. Very, very interesting indeed. Yeah. The more I learn about it, all these religions or all these things, I realize in reality, nobody actually has taken deep look into something and understand and live it out. They just all blend in with their environment, their cultural
yeah,
heritage, and of course, through the years, all these things that people had many many generations they learn but they don't actually accurately pass on to the next generation, I think. And all you have is just this shell of, okay, you are Catholic, you're culturally a Buddhist, or
yeah,
culturally this and that. And yeah, that's very interesting because I also look around. I thought of our Jewish brothers and
hmm
sisters, right? They are the same because I thought I met some of my Jewish friends and they had no idea all this stuff too. And I'm like,
yeah,
I thought you guys would be following
yeah.
all these other It's kind of funny. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I know with the Jews it's easier because they have those very strict food laws. So
Well, that's true.
usually, in my experience, if they're following that, right, you
Oh,
can tell you take them to a restaurant. If they're following the food laws, they
oh,
usually know their
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
But the liberal ones just don't care. I mean, yeah, like here's a
Yeah,
burger with cheese on top and like
yeah,
whatever. I don't
that's
care
right.
how they come. But the
Exactly.
Orthodox, like the Orthodox, just
Yeah,
they dress in a way that's very telling. They eat in a way that's very telling, so you
that's
can tell. But
true.
if you're talking like if you're talking about a person growing up in my background, for example, how do you tell? How do you tell that this person is
That's
calling himself Catholic, but what does that
yeah,
mean, right? Just that what does that mean? But and you're right, like people don't stop to look into that stuff. And uh,
that's right.
another thing that I always say is that the Protestants love to bash Catholics
Oh
for
yeah.
praying for claiming that we are idolaters because
Oh,
Catholics pray to the saints and Catholics pray to Mary
that's
and
right.
believe the Pope is God and you know
That's right.
it's a bunch of nonsense. And
Exactly.
but they're not wrong. That's what I keep saying because like they're wrong in the sense that the Catholic Church does not believe that, and they're wrong in the sense that a Catholic person that is really Catholic is not ascribing any power to that saint. But oh man,
That's true.
my family was right. So
Oh,
like
okay.
those people that are just going through the motions,
Oh, yeah,
they
yeah,
are
yeah.
absolutely 100% like
That's
ascribing
right.
power like to
That's true.
the
Yeah.
saints, right? They're asking the saints for
Exactly.
not for
Yeah.
intercession. Like they do believe like the saints are those
Yeah.
entities that can
Yeah.
grant you wishes. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. All kinds of people. Totally. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Very, very much so. But yeah.
So
But I do have
you
to
grew
say,
up Catholic, Mary Kay. Go
oh
ahead.
yeah,
I
yeah. Oh no,
didn't mean
no,
to
no.
interrupt you.
I just think no, no, no. You go ahead. Yeah, that's no problem.
I wanted to understand like you grow up Catholic
Mhm.
and then you go to a Catholic school. You
Yeah.
are in a Catholic family.
That
Why are you still Catholic? So because that
okay.
the growing up is the
Yeah.
culture is one thing, but then like you after you grow up, you have to make your
Yeah.
this choice for
That's
yourself,
a
right?
very, very good question. Yes. Now, first of all, I do have to say, I think my degree, I'd say, right, of
Mm-hmm.
Catholic in me, is
Catholicism,
actually
yeah.
has, yeah, the Catholicism. I think it's actually grown. I realize that now I'm at a state that when I look back, I was not quite, with the ones that goes through the motion, but certainly too, I have a bit of a lean. I do have to admit, as a bit of lean towards kind of the true, or at least being drawn to the true, like you're accepting Jesus in your heart type, right? Eh, I guess I didn't know at that time, but I just knew I had a
Mm-hmm.
love for Jesus, and that's what it was growing up. But it's interesting too because my mom, she converted, and then everybody again, the more I understand things and my experience, I realize we all have different degree, or at least in my mind, that's how I interpret it, the degree of how much you are being true to what it's supposed to be. So I think at the time, my mom, I think, is a pretty good degree, but still a lot of things too, she didn't have time. Nobody actually has time to go into all the details of all the teachings, all the papers, all these other things. But she lived out the belief as a Christian. She was also always very selfless and very
Mm-hmm.
kind and good to people. Although I have to kind of complain, right? It's always you always everybody's house, or every families have their own problems. So, but without going into all the details, my mom also had her issue. But
Mm-hmm.
regardless of all those issues, because of her upbringing, of her going through World War II and with my grandparents mistreating them, so there was some kind of post-traumatic kind of PTSD in her
Were
that,
your grandparents mistreating them
okay.
because of religion or
mm,
unrelated? It just
It's unrelated, I'd say, but
okay.
I okay. So without getting into all the details, because we can spend a whole few days
Oh yeah.
talking about this whole history of things, right? But give you a very quick summary was that my grandparents, okay, so my grandfather lost his mom when he was little, but he being
Mm-hmm.
the youngest of three boys, and he was spoiled, kind of bad. Anyway, so he met my grandmother, who was entirely an orphan because my grandmother lost her own mom when she was 4, because her mom was pregnant with her little brother, but died in childbirth. My essentially my great uncle passed away too and was a baby, so she was left with my great uncle, or I should say great grandfather, her father. But grandfather couldn't take it and passed away. So my grandmother became a total orphan since age 5. So had a rough
Hmm.
life, but she had, at the time it was like a huge family of, a dozen uncles and aunts around. So she got thrown around, to live with auntie number 1, uncle number 3 this day. And so you can tell, as a kid, you're being thrown around. She
Yeah.
had some psychological PTSD thing with her. She was also actually a loving person, but because of that environment, it just became kind of, not very stable. And so she always had problems with, I think, depression too. So anyway, between her and my grandfather, and then also they had to go through World War II, and at the time was the in Asia, they were in China, right? And so,
Hmm.
as you know, the Japanese were very bad, was invading China, all these things. And so the whole family was suffering too, and they had to run away. When you hear about like the planes, like, war planes flying overhead, and there were sirens like that. My mom had
Hmm.
PTSD of that because she was only 7. She used to tell the story, I was 7 or 8, and then I heard these sirens and I had to run to the bomb shelter thing. So my mom had that issue. And then grandfather, grandmother, because of that hardship too, and they were kind of little nuts too, and they didn't like, they were abusive to their kids, yeah, in a kind of weird way. And I don't even know how to say it, but I think grandfather was doing well, but then eventually the war stopped, ended, and he went and worked in Hong Kong while they were in China. And then my grandmother was just depression and was just crazy, didn't take care of the family. My mom was malnutritioned, and not because of them not being capable. It's just grandmother was just psychologically unstable. So anyway, that just resulted in my mom also suffering because of that. And so
Hmm.
that, so I can spend more time if we have more time to talk about. I think I should write a book about that. It's quite interesting, their history. So anyway, but that's my mom's background. But you could tell too, my mom was always very kind-hearted. She had a very compassionate heart. I think she raised us like that. So I think I tend to be like that. You're always being considerate like that. So anyway, so I think I got a kind of a affected by my mom. You look at her example, she had a lot of sufferings, although she also done a lot of good things. And but it's just that you look at into her life and what she had to go through, and then you, as you grow older, you start to understand, you see these things. And also to myself, right, as a growing adult, right, and I left Hong Kong when I was, at college age. I won't tell you the age because otherwise you can tell how old I am. But anyway,
Yeah.
so
Well,
so yeah. Anyway,
you're using Java and you use Unix in the 90s, so
yeah,
there's a
so I
great
can
guess right there. Say,
That's true. You can
yeah,
guess. But anyway, so I think, I was by myself too, don't forget. And so,
yeah.
I had to kind of figure things out on my own. But I realized that because of my faith and because of me growing up in the Catholic environment, looking at my mom, I always also have this kind of a, natural what you call it, like being drawn, let's say, to make sure I go to church. To me, I felt,
Hmm.
even though I didn't know what exactly it was, it's just when I go walk into the church, I felt. I still remember as a kid too. I always felt when I walk into a cathedral, I felt it's my true home, something like that. It's kind of a funny feeling that
Hmm.
this is where I belong. Kind of truly, this is beyond this world. This feeling. So I really feel that it is sort of a mystery that God has put into people when they, he would call people in different ways, but maybe one of the
Yeah.
ways is calling me is because of this feeling. I didn't know how to describe it, but I just knew. And, this is where the mystery of your faith is, right? It's a grace given by God, I feel. Now, I don't boast about it like, oh, I have it and you don't have, not like that. It's just more like, I just know, right? It is the way
Hmm.
you hear your shepherd's voice, so to speak. So anyway, and then went through, kind of iterations, and I wasn't, in the beginning, wasn't understanding a lot of things. But over time, as I also look back to, I realized, you start to think about all the things that are happening to you, and you
Did you
started
feel
to,
like that? Did you feel like that as a kid as well? Because again, you've been going to church since you were a kid,
yeah.
and then you describe that you have this feeling of being at home. Is
Hmm.
this something that came later as you lived your faith, or is this something that was always there with you?
I feel it's always there with me, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't it wasn't clear to me like what it was and what it
Mm-hmm.
is and what it implies, right? It's just more like it's just purely a feeling. You're drawn to it. Something your heart is being drawn to it, but you don't exactly understand. But I think as I mentioned, as I grow older and older, and I do have to say too, I think it was in maybe like 20 years ago or so, I had this very intense like conversion that I realized that it was becoming the real, conversion. I all of a sudden my degree of knowing God has increased because of some interesting kind of exposure to me to reading some literature and things like that. I felt the call of God too. I didn't couldn't hear, but you just felt He's trying to get
Yeah.
closer to you, to reach out to you. So I had that feeling. So I felt that okay, all along this feeling, this your sensation of knowing this feeling of God, it is true. He is coming towards me more and more.
Mm-hmm.
He's so to speak revealing himself more and more to me. I think I still to this day, I think it's just every single day is revealing. He's been revealing himself more and more to me. I cannot see him, I cannot touch her, so to speak, physically, right? All these things, but you just have this if, of this knowledge that's inside you. It's only you, it's in your heart that you can feel God. I think that's what it is. And I do feel at a lot of times too when I can't figure out something, or if I really get angry or something, I truly believe that I could communicate with him in a very funny way. It's a funny way in terms of is through my thoughts of praying to him. Maybe almost seems like talking to a loving father, right? It's somebody like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I do have to say, it's unfortunate, my own father who passed away already, but I never had this kind of conversation with him. He was a very quiet
Yeah.
and introvert man. But whereas I felt like this heavenly father is the one that I felt I can talk with, and somehow he's guiding me. There's things that are happening that he made me see, like what's going on. So yeah, so I don't know how to describe. I wish I could share it better in some sense that can tell people, but I just don't know how yet. I think I'm still also
Yeah.
praying. Yeah,
That's
if you,
funny. That's funny because like this is
yeah,
even if you could even if you could share,
hmm,
like what, then what, like what does it mean for a person that cannot experience that?
yeah. That's
And I was the other day I had this guest that was talking about meditation, and then they're
yeah,
describing this nirvana state that I'm but
mm,
butchering, of course, the whole thing. But you're describing the state that you get into
yeah.
through meditation, and I mean I understand it. Like as she's describing, I understanding, and
Yeah, no,
I just don't feel it. I mean,
you don't
and I
feel,
actually try. I actually tried the technique, but
yeah.
didn't. Nothing happened.
Oh,
My wife tried, and it happened for her. So I think
oh, yeah,
fantastic, right? Just
yeah.
and is this
That's,
Buddhist meditation? But you can't. I'm not a very feelings based person. Like my
mhm.
conversion to Catholicism was purely rational,
Oh, okay.
in a sense. Like and I still, there's not a lot that I feel about it. So I always
Mm,
love to talk to people like you, but like even if you
yeah,
could describe to me,
yeah.
like
That's right.
how does that feel, or to or to a non-believer for
Yeah,
that matter, that description is not the thing, right? The
definitely.
finger pointing at the moon is not the moon, right? It's
That's
just
right.
so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like basically, how can you make the other people feel the same you feel? Then I don't know how to do it. It's only through God that can make it
Hmm.
happen. Maybe it's a grace that He gives to
Yeah.
the person to feel, to sense Him. So yeah, yeah.
You did you have any period in your life in which you were doubtful of that, and because I want to try to explore,
Hmm.
like, you're a rational person, you
Yeah,
are, like, a lot
I
of
feel
times
like
you've been
that.
talking about, and you've been talking to engineers, like you have a background
Yes,
in math, which is even
that's right.
math is even
Yes,
more logical for
yeah,
math people. Like the engineers are like those guys who are
yes,
just approximating everything, and oh
yeah,
man, like,
exactly.
so. And how do you put together this very feeling based think that you feel. Because look, when I was an atheist and somebody would describe what you're describing to me, like what I would have responded immediately is that, look, this is not proof of anything. This could be all in your mind. This is, how do you know that this is not just your brain generating those feelings, and your brain, like, how do you know that you being this cathedral feeling yourself at home is not like a completely natural brain only reaction to something that you see, some conditioning? Like, how does that point to any supernatural being, right? So for you, how do you view those things and how do you put them together?
Yeah, that's a actually yes, very very good question. Excellent. Yes, and so yeah, there's something as I feel, right? Again, it gets into this feeling part. It is true. Every day of work has I have to be very logical and rational about things in the scientific field or technical. But when it comes to matter of faith and all of these, that requires your heart to understand, it almost seems like the heart has its own way of understanding. Is a different realm of like logical, no, I shouldn't even use the word logical. It's just a different realm of
Mm-hmm.
an understanding of this transcendence of this knowledge. I suppose is a mystery. Is truly, I
Mm-hmm.
think that the best one of the best words, and then we can also see in Catholic literature, is the mystery of this all.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's what it is. But yeah, how do you bridge it, right? I really don't know. But I think, on the other hand, I feel that, as human beings, we are people of feelings, even though you would think, okay, I'm just not a person of feeling and everything. But the thing is, I do believe, right? All of us, we were born into a world. We need the attention. We need to be loved. And our parents or whoever took care of us, right, took care of us with their love. It's got to be some level, hopefully, some level of love and care that truly cares, that transcends logical thing or rational thing. It's not just feeding you food, and it's probably spending the attention, the time, and listening to you, that type of stuff. And maybe has to do with, maybe how we are too. Part of it, yes, is how we were born. We were given that gift. But on the other hand, the environment also help us to understand, to grow in towards knowing God, so to speak, right? There's this kind of non tangible, or kind you is metaphysical, right? Kind of like not like things that you can see. How do you see love? How do you see feelings?
Yeah.
Thing. So I think maybe, m- how can I say? Maybe in some ways I do have to say maybe I'm also very fortunate. There were people who showed their love to me maybe when I was growing up. So then I would know how to respond to it. Maybe there were people that truly care about it, about you. Then
Mm-hmm.
then you start to sense it. You start to learn and realize that that's the love. That's not necessarily just rational. Eat your food, do this, do that, but it's the steps that are beyond just the basic stuff is really what makes us more human. Is this feelings, this emotional, this true caring, this heart, a person with a heart type of thing. I Maybe I'm not describing it well, but I
Uh,
think that's, yeah, that's how
people
I
have been trying, I guess people have been trying to describe this through
did
art and literature since forever.
that's right.
I tend to believe that we're not going to be the ones that finally manage it, right? So like
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
it might just be the, how the human experience is. But
that's right.
was there any time in your life or career that you truly saw this making a difference? For, I say, hey,
Mm.
look, if I wasn't religious in general, Catholic in particular, my life would have gone a completely different way. Just,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a very good question. But I think, kind of strangely speaking, I feel is to realize that is usually, well, or how can I say, and because I've always been a believer, more so
mm-hmm,
as a believer, even though may not truly understand all the implications, but it also takes time, because also, especially with Catholicism, as you know too, right? The theme of
mm-hmm.
suffering being like sort of a
Yeah.
central theme, and it goes against the world. We're saying that, you in order to have our life, to be redeemed is through suffering. Suffering is also a very mysterious thing that everybody would avoid it. And I don't think God wants suffering on us either. But yet it is something, as I'm also growing older and understanding things and realizing that it is a necessary component that we need to go through in order to achieve, to go beyond just that, that basic level, or kind of like grow in our spiritual understanding. You have to go through some level of suffering and things that you don't like.
One thing that a lot of atheists claim as the best argument against theism is the so-called problem of evil, right? Because
Hmm.
if you have a God that loves you, and if you have a God that has the characteristics of the God of the Bible, how do you explain how messed up the world is, and all the suffering, and all the just the
Yeah,
and yeah,
that's right.
it is something that a lot of people raise, right? Just the amount of
Absolutely.
suffering in
Yes.
this world. But funny enough, I this had the my conversion story is super weird, because a lot of things that usually are things that push people away were exactly
Yeah.
things that push me in.
Oh.
And the problem of evil being one of them. One day I understood that, like, I was a very naturalistic person, which today I just cannot even fathom.
Oh.
And as a very naturalistic person, your explanation for all of this is that there's no such thing as suffering. There's no such thing as
Mm.
good. It's just like we
Yeah.
evolved in a certain way. We evolved in a certain way, and then the things that are good for you, you see as good, and you pursue them, right? Because why
Mhm.
do you pursue mating? Because that's how you propagate the species, right?
Yeah.
Why do you avoid suffering? Because that's going to kill you, and then you will not
That's
propagate
right.
the species. And at some point, I could see how this would explain the good. Like, oh, you want
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things because at some level there is some evolutionary explanation for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yes.
could not explain, I could not, through this naturalistic worldview, I could not anymore explain the level of evil that we see in this world.
Oh,
It
that's
is
right.
so bad. Like,
It is.
I understand why I would rob you,
That, that,
as because I get your resources and etc. I understand why I would kill you. I don't
mhm.
understand why you would torture and rape a child,
Oh, oh, oh.
right? So
That's
it
yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it feels like a level of evil that has to be
Yeah. That's right.
almost unnatural, and
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
the
That's
other
right.
guy, so to speak, right?
Yeah, 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 that's right. But I think, you brought those up, and I think it has also to do with, that the fact that there are evils, right? That there are
Mhm.
evil things in the world. It is very true. There's devils are, and not just like fair in stories or stuff. There are, and they are there without us seeing. That's kind of causing havoc, so to speak, and causing people, so to speak, right? If I use the terminology, in our faith, that it says it causes us to sin, is the temptations that are
Mhm.
out there. So I do believe that that's what it is. And sometimes people don't even know about it. And also too, maybe some of the things we're doing are actually cause us to sin, like those things. And I do believe that too. And a lot of times too, they are also quite subtle too, without you knowing too. Some things we're doing are actually very sinful in nature as well. So I think those are the kind of things that, for me, right, I'm trying to also learn and to understand it too. There's just there's a lot of complicated stuff that's kind of going on, and they're not very easy. But I think those are the kind of things, when I got to a point in which I don't understand, then I would really turn kind of prayerful, right? You're really like asking God, can you help me to understand what this is? Or how do I go about solving problems? And it's also very true. I'm also like, I get upset too when I look at all these things that are happening, or you look into Ukraine, or, the
Yeah.
Gaza, all these things. Right? It's just, why? Like, why? It's just, I don't know. I kind of got to a point you're upset too, but there's just this total utter, uselessness on my part. What can I do, kind of thing. And but I also feel, as human beings, I feel that I'm also responsible for maybe at least praying about it, or at least being aware of, maybe if I have the chance of an opportunity to help, I should be helping like that. I think maybe that's the extent I know what I can do. But at least too, I can really be praying about it and asking God, please help, this whole world. And that's why too I go to adoration. You're also always like praying. You're praying too for not just for yourself, but there are also a lot of problems that are happening in the world. Can God, can you really help, to kind of help people to maybe being aware of being drawn to doing evil things, knowing about it. And also too, to me also too, it's not like I'm looking at this person looks evil or that person looks evil. It's more like we are all the same. You look at even the person doing bad things, they could be a father, they can be a son, they are somebody else's son, somebody's uncle. They are also part of the family. So to me, I'm also thinking, if we can somehow be educating, right, making people realize, the importance to learn to do good, maybe to wipe away some of these sufferings that they have to go through that would cause them to sin. Maybe that would, start to solve some problems, essentially going to the root of the person to help to eliminate more problems in the future. I don't know if it's possible, like, meaning maybe in
Yeah.
this generation we should be like teaching the younger people to learn to love more than, hate, things like that. So
For the people who are listening that are not Catholic, you mentioned adoration. What
yeah.
is that? Just to
Oh yeah, yeah. That's true. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So adoration is okay. First of all, is the in Catholic we believe Jesus is actually also the communion is actually Jesus in it. Is basically, how can I say it? We remember Jesus. He died for us, and he offered us himself up as the bread to save the world, and also then we also have the wine in our liturgy is basically his blood. So in other words, these are very sacred, the most sacred uh, things, if I can say that, to kind of think of Jesus. It's actually, it is Jesus, right? That's what we
yeah.
believe. Yeah. Okay. And then
It's not
for
a symbol. It's not a symbol of Jesus. It's
exactly,
he himself. And
he himself is in there. So it is the most on ad how can I, well, what is the word to use? It's the most venerable, or most
holy.
holy, yeah, holy of all, to refer to Jesus. And we receive him too in communion, is when you're receiving him into your heart. And then adoration, as far as adoration goes, is that normally, right, the communion hosts and the blood, everything's in the tabernacle. And they are these are sacraments that are kept inside, but then there are also, we expose them. So then when you expose the body, the communion of hosts, that means you're kind of exposing Jesus, I think, to everybody to come and adore. And then we have this adoration. That's what is adoration, is a way of you to meditate and spend time with Jesus, when he's exposed to you through the communion host. So I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough, but certainly too, I have to say it is very powerful to me. It is, again, another thing, I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's
Yeah.
because of going to adoration for the past 20 years that actually has truly transformed
Oh,
me because of that. Yeah.
you are doing this for you go to not only to mass but
Yeah,
to
that's right.
adoration as well
Through
for 20
adoration.
years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So I
Okay.
sign up with my, yeah, chapel. I go even more than that. Or when I go to Europe too, anywhere I go, when there's adoration, okay, I'll go in. If I can, I stay an hour. They always say spend an hour with Jesus, but sometimes you don't have the time. It's okay, but it's just,
Yeah.
I just spend the time with Jesus whenever I can. So yeah, that's what it is. And also
And
too, not to say, right, even the late Saint John, the Pope Saint John Paul II,
mhm,
he was
mhm.
like doing his renewal of his consecration, and then he would pray in front of the adoration to expose the sacrament to pray to. So yeah, and I think everybody also said of the same thing. It's a mystery. I think it's everything, again, it's a very quiet kind of a communion with Jesus. So yeah.
So for you, this is a moment of prayer,
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
mostly. Yeah.
mostly. Yeah.
I don't do that, and I
Oh,
should. I Yeah, and part of the reason is that in the church that I go to, this is in the middle of the week,
oh, yeah.
so it's very hard for me to do.
That's
Not that the weekend will be any easier, because I have my three kids,
yeah.
and I suppose you don't take kids to adoration, because if they're kids, then it's not a peaceful environment anymore.
But
But I had the opportunity to go a couple of weeks ago, and there's just I love the idea, right? And I love
that's right.
the thinking is that if you truly believe that Jesus is present
Yeah.
in the Eucharist, like for real, why
Mm.
wouldn't you go there?
Yeah.
Like, right? Why wouldn't you want to be
That's
in
right.
His presence?
That's right.
It's just like as a new convert. I mean, it was already a couple of years for me to fully accept the Eucharistic, like
Oh,
the real
okay.
presence, right? In
Oh,
the beginning, I didn't. It was just like, yeah,
oh,
look,
okay.
just and I
Yeah.
know I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone, because a lot of I was not alone. Now I'm a different person, but like a lot
Yeah.
of modern Catholics do not believe in the real
Oh,
presence,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
because I think it feels like, yeah, I mean, just feels like magic, right?
I
In a
know.
sense, like
Yeah, that's
you're
right.
just saying that
That's
it's really just a host. And
yeah.
when people first told me about this, it was like, yes, then get the DNA and clone him, right? Just well,
Yeah,
it
that's right.
feels sounds absurd,
Yeah, that's right.
um, but it for you it's not absurd. For you
Mm,
it is what it is. So
mhm.
how where do you anchor that belief?
Yeah, I think it's I don't even know how to say it. And like I said, I think it's again, if you recall just short while ago when I first started talking about how I feel the degree of me getting to know Jesus is getting closer and closer was also because when I was introduced to this, I never knew about adoration until maybe 20 years ago, roughly about that
Mm-hmm.
time too. So when I first went there, I also didn't feel too much, because also, oh, it's just receiving communion. But but I think perhaps too, if I can refer to the Bible that says, right, where Jesus says, let the little children come to me. And, I think it's not like actually 5-year-old children necessarily. It's just more like if you
Mm-hmm.
have a heart that you are open, just like a child. You know how like little children, when you tell them something, they believe right away. They don't even question it. I think basically if you just have to have that heart of, okay, I'm opening to this possibility of learning things and getting to know someone, which is in this case Jesus, then he will fill your hearts with good things. And I think because that's how I started going, because when I got introduced to adoration, I just said, oh wow, okay, I want to know more about it, and I'm not going to question, and I let it
Mm-hmm.
come to me. So I think it works that way, because like I said,
Mm-hmm.
the joy, all the stuff. And I didn't have time, right, to kind of earlier mention too, there are things, bad things, that not too bad, I shouldn't say, there are also unhappy things that happened in my life at the time. But because of this, me having the opportunity to get to know Jesus more through adoration, and I did, and I accepted it without questioning the that Jesus actually really have his grace kind of given to me slowly, not overnight, has to be over time. And there were times in between too, I was also very mad, I was filled with anger towards some things that didn't go well and all that. I was very angry. I used to be angry too. Some things, when I thought about something that angered me, I would get angry. But I realized that over time, because of me going to adoration, somehow I got transformed. For some reason, I start to realize, all the stuff that was bothering me, it's like nothing. Because what I realize is that knowing Jesus is the most important. It's somehow, right? It didn't happen overnight. It's just something over time it would occur to you. And because of me recognizing this, really the true joy really came to me. Like these days, I felt like if I would be called by God to go to him anytime, I'm ready. Like I feel like I'm ready. I truly am ready. I don't feel there's nothing to regret, and I know where I'm going to, so I'm not afraid. If I have to say goodbye, I'll just say goodbye like that. It's just got to that state, right? It's again, maybe it's really truly when you open up to God, He will help. That part I can testify, basically.
How long do you think it took from the moment you were introduced to it to? I mean, it is a process, and I understand it's
It's a
an ongoing
process.
process. But there must have been a point in which you say, okay, now I clearly feel it, right? And maybe you were already quite transformed a little bit before that, but that was the moment you realize and say, hey, well, it feels like I'm a different person now. So
Yeah,
is that a
yeah.
1 year is it a 1 year thing, a 2 year thing, a 5 year thing?
I think, because like I said, if I recall when I first learned about adoration to now, yeah, roughly 20, even over 20 years. I don't know. It's interesting. I'd say it's a very gradual process. I think it almost
Mm-hmm.
seems like you would be thinking of like geographical, natural, your landscape. Some the coastal region. You see all of these slowly your cliff
Mm-hmm.
kind of being eaten away. And then, over 20 years, all of a sudden, like, a 10-foot wall get dropped down or something. It almost seems like it's this gradual process that I haven't even kept track of how long it took me to
Mm-hmm.
actually realize. But certainly it happens. If you kind of look back, you realize, oh, this past 20 years, truly enough, I could feel this transformation that has happened in me, and the anger has gone, whatever was bothering me, really, because he took away all the anger from me. He did, yeah, whatever that was in me. And I realized too, there's some anger perhaps too is like from generation too, like you've also
Yeah.
heard generational in the root of your family that
You had your parents and your grandparents and all the war stories and
yeah,
all of that.
that's
So that
all
needs to
those.
go away as well, right?
And yeah, that's right. So I did feel it really wash away all of these things. And I don't know how to explain it. It's this very mysterious kind of action that's happening when you every day, not say every day, but like I sign up for weekly adoration. Sometimes I go more. And in fact I go even more sometimes when I have opportunities. So I really truly believe it is Jesus, and I long for him, right? They're funny too. Sometimes you go to the chapel, you pray, but I also would pick up my book and read. And I always open to something that I'm reading just when I needed it. And it's just this mysterious thing, right?
Now I'm gonna ask you this question as a curious Catholic. Forget the host of the podcast for a while, but like
Sure.
I'm very interested in starting doing this because, as I said, I've been a Catholic for around 5 years. Forget my upbringing. I don't count that. And really, only in the last 2 years, I really came to accept the Catholic teaching on the Eucharist. Which, by the way, I always like to remind people, it's not exclusive to Catholics. The Orthodox, the Coptics, I mean, everybody else
Yeah,
except for modern Protestants will accept this. And
that's right.
and I, just it. I think it transformed the way I see
Mhm.
the Mass
That's right.
already, right? Because like going to Mass now is a very different thing than what it used to
Hmm.
be.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to start going to adoration as well. So you just go and say you're not necessarily praying. You're just there. You're reading a book. You're doing something. You're just
Yeah.
there.
There. That's right. Exactly. So your question is, what else do I do
Yeah,
at adoration? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
just
right.
do I go there and I read
Oh
a
yeah.
book? Like I've been reading.
Mhm.
I've been reading a Confessions of Saint Augustine, and I never have time because
Yeah.
my kids are always around. I'm always
Yeah.
working. So I go to adoration. I
Oh,
read the book for an hour.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. That will be all good too. In fact, I've seen people that are, how some people they like to write their journal too. People also go
Hmm.
and pray, they write their journal in there. And I also recently, because I just went to Poland for a vacation with my daughter,
Hmm.
and in fact, I also have taken interest into the late Pope Saint John Paul II,
Second,
and
yeah.
and one of his letters too that I was reading, he was saying that he would go, and when he was writing some of his books, he would go into the chapel or adoration, and he would be writing his books there because he felt that
Hmm.
when he was with Jesus, he actually got the inspiration to write. So yes, it can take anything. Is I think the idea is you want to focus your mind to Jesus, right? Doing things that are
Hmm.
of Jesus and writing, meditating, praying, or asking him questions, or just sitting there and listening to him. And I've also heard too, it's also good sometimes you don't do much and just sitting there and just simply adore through the Eucharist. You adore Jesus, and you think about you open up your mind, and he'll put words into your mind too. I think I do
Yeah.
believe it. Sometimes too, it's funny. I have to say, I've done that, and I realized there would be words or thoughts that all of a sudden it popped up. I don't know where it came from, and because of that, I do believe that it's when you believe and you pay attention, things will happen. I think it will happen. So
Yeah. No, the
yeah.
reason I asked you for like if you have a timeline of when do you start to
Mm.
feel like a different person is that it feels to me, I'm sorry, but it feels to me that this is almost a testable thing, right? You have a
Testable.
theory, yeah,
That's
that like you have a theory. I'm gonna go to this place in the presence of Jesus, and something's gonna happen. I'm gonna be
hmm
transformed. I'm gonna be less angry, and then you
yeah,
wait a couple of years, and that thing happens, right? So just it is
yeah,
something that you need a lot of patience and commitment to test, but it sounds
true.
like something that you could test for yourself, right? Just
That's true. Yeah, that is very true. It is true. It's a slow but is a certain process. I'd say. Yeah, that's right. And you have to be there, kind of open minded too. I think. But I guess you can still also go there and be like skeptical and just go and be transformed. But just be ready to be accepting, right, of any kind of transformation that can happen. But you can also, I would imagine, you can be skeptical. It's like doubting Thomas and going in, and then
mhm.
Jesus will show you if you're open for it too.
Thomas. Thomas is
Yeah.
my favorite apostle
That's
because
right. Yeah.
I'm exactly like that, and I think just I take solace on the fact that just I'm not excluded from this.
That's right. Yeah.
If Thomas could have it, so
Oh my
can I.
goodness.
But
Yeah.
I'm very 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 skeptical,
You're
and I still
skeptical.
am,
Yeah.
and I treat all of those things with extreme skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
and the testing thing is interesting because I shared that the other day as well. Like I became an atheist at age 14,
Oh.
and then a couple of years later I had something that I describe. There's a lot of nuance to that, but I broadly
Yeah.
describe as a new age phase,
Oh, okay.
in which I was into the occult and like stuff like
Oh,
that, and
yeah.
that lasted for a couple of years,
Okay.
and I was a member of this initiatic mystical order, which
Oh,
again,
mystical.
I have very little respect for those things today, but it has this idea that we have this secret knowledge that you have to be initiated into, and then you
Oh,
go to grade number one, and then number two and number three, and there's always a ritual, so you go from one level to the other, and then
wow.
you are given secret knowledge, and I think, and, I was a very skeptical person, but I had an experience, the
Oh,
TLDRs, that I had an experience that kind of like, whoa, just maybe
oh,
the world is not how I thought it was.
yeah.
And I wanted to, I had a lot of friends that were into this. I wanted to give this a chance.
Oh, okay.
So I went into this with, okay, maybe this is. So I was really open minded for those 3 years, 4 years. I was very open minded, and I
Okay.
was truly thinking like, if those guys say it, I don't know.
Uh-huh.
When I get to a certain, I will get initiated into those things, and when I get to a certain level, this will be revealed to me. And then
Oh,
I think it was like level 4 or 5. It doesn't truly even matter. The way you did it is that you receive a book with instructions to do a part of the ritual at home,
oh,
and
wow.
then you would go and do the second part of the ritual in a setting with a lot of other people, like from
Yeah.
this order, and the part that I had to do at home, I had to write down a lot of words in a piece of paper. And again, this is
Uh-huh.
it's been like by then 3 years and a half, 4 years that I'm involved with this. And I had to write
Uh-huh.
down a lot of words in a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And in the ritual, we would say, I'm alone at home. So you would say some words and then draw 2 pieces of paper. And those 2 pieces of paper that you draw, they describe your personality. So you're being guided to get the right piece of paper, Right? It's
Okay.
not. It's not supposed to be a random thing. And then what I did is like I did this once, and they tell you aspects of their personality. So you're gonna be known in this order by those two words. This becomes like your secret name.
Oh,
So I got like those two words. I don't remember what they were. Like a meek and peaceful. Like and it's a
okay.
fantastic. But then I'm like, look, if this describes my personality, I'm gonna draw this 5 times, and I should get similar results, right? I, I don't have to get the same words, but I need to draw words that are similar. Like I cannot get meek and anger,
Yeah.
like meek
Yeah.
and
Oh,
powerful, or
got it.
peaceful and warlike. So I
Oh,
do this
okay.
5 times. I do this 5 times, and I conclude that this is a completely random piece of crap nonsense. Right?
Oh,
Just so,
oh,
but it is like a. But I've given the chance, and it was something like the thing is that look, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of your life. But
that's right.
after that, then I became like I said, like so if you think in terms of
Yeah.
peaks and thoughts,
Yep.
I start as a normal person, then I become an atheist, and then I go into this thing
Yeah.
with a very open mind. But then when I come back to atheism, I was like, okay, like now I'm like nothing exists that I cannot touch, because this
Oh,
was all,
wow.
which lasted until very recently. Yeah.
Oh, so was it like a cult group that you joined, or is just simply a?
You could, yeah, it's for those who may know, this is called Rosicrucianism, and I consider it to be a nonsensical cult. People may
Oh,
disagree. If you're still into this, you might disagree. If you are a person listening to this that you're into this,
okay.
maybe come to Christ. 'Cause- but
Yeah.
but I yeah like I have zero
Yeah.
respect for that today. But like it took it was
Mhm.
something like I didn't want to go back. First of all, I had a lot of friends that were into this, and I think that
Oh,
kind of
oh, that's
pushed me
why.
in that direction. But as a teenager that I was, I mean, I was 17, 18, or something like that.
Oh,
It
that's
was
right.
great. It was something easy to sell. This
Okay.
idea that like you have special knowledge, special power, they're only you're gonna have, and it's only for very special people who are almost Gnostic. If you heard and studied the Gnostic heresies in the early
Yeah.
days of the church, it feels
Yeah.
a lot like that, right?
Like that. Oh, okay. Okay. Wow, that is quite interesting. So you went
But
through quite
I tested. Yeah, I tested. Yeah, I tested,
yeah,
and for me,
that's
it was
right.
like, yeah, look, and which is why I
Yeah.
was so interested when you're describing the adoration, the process of how you
Yeah.
tested this,
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
you can come from. Again, you don't have to, but you could come from the skeptical point of view that I have
That's right.
and say,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. That,
if I want to be open minded, I'll go once a week. I'll go for a year, and I'll see what happens. Right?
yeah, that's right. But now you talk about this testability of things, right? I I think I can recall I got tested too because when I was doing my internship, right, college, and
Mm-hmm.
then I went to Boston and did a summer of internship, and during that time I got introduced to a group of young women, and they were as it turns out I think they were like Church of Christ something, right? One of the branches, they
Mm-hmm.
call themselves like Church of Christ. And I mean, initially it seemed okay. They were doing Bible study. So during the summertime, especially, I did work during the day, then evening time I got invited maybe once a week, twice a week, and there's all Bible study. But it was funny too. Initially, I thought, okay, Bible study, fine, and we study the same Bible. We look at, even though not Catholic. But then I realized that slowly they started attacking me. As you mentioned about how Protestant, they weren't really truly Protestant. As I now I think back,
Mm-hmm.
they were probably more of a cult group than it is like with
Yeah.
like true Protestant. They were just using the name of Church of Christ. How I
Mm-hmm.
realized was that they started kind of almost like honing on me, knowing that, because everybody shared the background. I said, oh, I'm Catholic. So I think they were really against Catholic in a very subtle way. So they were honing on me. They were calling me almost every day, like, oh, let's go for more Bible study. You need it like that. And then they also one of whom they were a teaching at Wellesley College too. and had access to some of the facility, they said, "Oh, we can take you out sailing on the boat at Wellesley and all that." And in fact, I did go with them, but I realized, oh my gosh, I better stop going. And that was like probably 5 or 6 weeks after getting to know them. Started with once a week Bible study, and then twice a week, and then 3 times and 4 times, and they want to kind of got me into these activity to still talk about Jesus and trying to convert me, so to speak, right? Then I realized that something is wrong, that you just got this sense that, okay, they are not actually right. Even if you're a Protestant, you don't go about doing this kind of things and trying to disprove me and choosing, even though I do have to say, right, Catholicism was what I was like cradle Catholic too, and then somehow I believe it. But anyway, so I actually did get tested, but I also found out, I think, but that was a good experience, because then I also started looking a bit more and realized that if they become questionable, you could tell that they are not true, because they become like they want to coerce you into their way of
Yeah.
thinking like that too. So I kind of got tested, but I eventually to decline all their calls, and thankfully there was no cell phone at that time, so
Yeah.
it was like a landline. So I just like, that's it, I finished my internship, goodbye. So they couldn't reach me at where I was
I had
staying at.
I had another cult-like experience as well at the tail end of my
Oh,
experience in this other thing. So
yeah.
I was at the time I was a socialist and a vegetarian.
Okay.
Veganism was not a thing.
Oh, okay.
I would be a vegan if veganism was a thing, because for me it was all about morals. Like I said, I
Oh,
wanted to show that I'm this moral individual. And by the way, maybe this is why I sometimes shit on vegans a lot. I mean, of course, I respect
mhm.
everybody's decision, but because this
Yeah.
was something I did in the past, I always, sometimes I attack people on as a joke. But
Yeah.
I was like this semi-vegan for a couple of years,
Okay.
and that was close to the place where I lived. There was this restaurant that was run by there was this couple from Taiwan that
Oh,
run the restaurant. It was a Chinese restaurant, and it was a vegan restaurant. And
okay.
that restaurant was essentially a facade to try to co-opt people for a cult. So they noticed that I started going. They
Wow.
noticed that I started going every. I was always at the restaurant because it was really really good.
Okay.
And so they invited me to their home,
Oh, okay.
and then like to have tea,
Yeah.
and I used to drink tea with a lot of sugar, like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
for those guys, like, tea was this ritual,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
That's
they put, it was this lotus flower and then no
yeah.
sugar. And this one thing I learned from them. I still don't drink anything with sugar anymore, coffee, tea, and I think I
Yeah.
learned with them, and that I'm thankful
Oh,
for.
yeah.
But I would go to their homes, and they would have tea together and have cookies,
Yeah.
and then they started talking about this. I still don't know what they were,
Oh,
and they would start explaining about the Tao and some Chinese
oh,
stuff and like etc.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, sounds
Yeah.
great, and like I'm
Yeah.
just making conversation, right?
Yeah.
And then one day they started inviting me. Like, said, they noticed that I'm there. I keep coming. They invite me to their home again. I go to their home again. So they
Yeah.
invite me to go to this thing,
Yeah.
and they said there's going to be a couple of monks from this. So it's this religious thing. So I
Yeah.
go there. This guy gives a lecture in Chinese,
Oh,
and it's a very, 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 very boring, like, slow lecture. It's like this Chinese monk or Taiwanese,
yeah.
and this other person translates what he just said in a very slow pace as well. So I sleep and I have no idea what they talk about. But then after this, there is a
Yeah.
ritual and a dinner, and the dinner is delicious. So I keep going, but
That's
but I always zone out. Like, I go to this thing, and like they're talking about something about the Tao, and I'm sleeping. Then there's a ritual that I don't participate, but I watch, and then I have a fantastically
no.
good dinner. So I think I've been like 10 times or so.
Wow.
And other people start approaching me and start to get like more and more serious, and then I stop
Yeah.
going,
It's
like,
something.
altogether.
Yeah.
But I still don't know to this date the name of
People don't.
this. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly what they were doing, but I know that the food was delicious, at least for the standards that I had at the day. and it was something Taiwanese related to Dao.
Oh,
That's what I remember.
oh, okay. Very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you also yeah, it's kind of similar to that. They try to attract
Yeah.
you to their cult group or whatever, but through some other
Oh,
means
but
that yeah, that
they use food. I mean that
yeah,
should be I think this should be a lesson that all cults draw.
yeah,
Like if you want to
yeah.
attract people to your cult, I mean, offer them dinner
Oh,
and
that's
like a really good dinner because
really good.
I would go.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
joke. I would go just and honestly, I think if the lectures were not that like sleep conducive and
yeah,
done in Chinese, which I
yeah,
don't speak, I
yeah.
maybe I would have understood.
Maybe
You know,
that's
maybe I
right.
would have taken some interest, but
Right.
the
That,
food
that's
itself was the food itself was worth it.
that's interesting. Yeah, that's very very cool. And that was in Canada. That happened to you in Canada too, or
No, in my late my last years in Brazil, this
oh,
happened,
oh,
and then
that
I
was
got
in
out of there.
Brazil.
Yeah,
Wow, that's very
yeah.
interesting. Wow. Okay. Wow.
So
Yeah.
I left around that age. I was like 20 something.
Oh, oh,
So
okay. Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's all very fuzzy, like the exact years and etc.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah,
I was 20. I was in my 20s,
you
right? So
were
like 20
much
years ago.
younger.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. Wow. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I think I was back then with that college experience. I was also, yeah, I was like my early 20s too, like college. Yeah. Yeah, that is very interesting. Yeah, I didn't get food, but I did get to go sailing at Wellesley College, but that was about it.
There you go.
That's
This
right.
is the equivalent. This is the equivalent of cold calling
That
people that offer you DoorDash passes today to go
yeah,
on a sales meeting.
that's right.
Time sharing people also do this as well. I was scammed by a time sharing group of people in Mexico. So
Oh, no.
I've never heard of a timeshare before. Have you heard of a timeshare before? You know what that
Um,
is?
you mean like timeshare for like a place where
If
you're renting like
vacation, yeah, yeah.
vacation? That I've heard
The
of. I've never
worst
done.
the worst investment you can make in your life is a timeshare
It's a timeshare.
unit. So
Oh, okay. Yeah,
you buy a piece of a property and it's impossible to sell because
yeah,
nobody buys it.
that's right.
And so they're always trying to scam you into buying it because that's the only way. A rational person would never buy that piece of crap.
Right. Yeah.
So what happened? We landed. I go to vacation in Cancun with my wife. So we land there, and this guy just asks you, "Where are you from?" And this is your ICP definition for the startup folks in the audience. Like, where are you from? If you say U.S. and Canada, you are their ICP. So we say, oh, we're Canadians. So they say, oh, amazing. There is this offer here that there is exclusive for Americans and Canadians. So you want to hear more? Like I'm waiting. I said, sure. Worst mistake they can make is that when people, do you want to hear more? I say yes. You always say no. So like he starts explaining that we go into this resort. We said they're developing this new part of the city, and
Yeah.
this new part of the city has all those hotels, and the folks from those hotels are offering free breakfast. And
Okay.
all you have to do is go see the hotels. And the reason we're doing this is that next time you come, maybe you're going to stay in that hotel because so they want to, it's a new part of the city. It's
Oh,
far from the resort area. So they wanted to go, it's only valid for US and Canada people.
yeah.
And they wanted to go and see the new hotels. But when you get there, it's so my wife and I think, okay, fair, like it doesn't hurt. Maybe they're beautiful hotels, and maybe next time we'll stay there. So when you go there, they try to sell you a timeshare,
Oh.
and you can't leave. Like it's in the middle of nowhere. Taxis don't go there. You
Oh
go
my.
with their van. You have to leave with their van, and they press you to buy the timeshare thing until there's no
Oh.
tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. So how did you get out? I mean, you were you just
Oh, in fact, I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's not the cartel. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's
so
true. Yeah.
eventually they drove us back, but
My
we
yeah.
spent the whole day. We spent the whole day
Wow.
there,
Just
and
that.
like, and then they start at the end. They start acting angry. They get
Wow.
angry at you, like they treat you terribly. But once we already said, I don't want to buy this, right? Oh,
Wow. That's right. And then they
one
were
of the worst
ups-
experiences I've ever had in my life. So like,
oh,
and they will not tell you again. This is the thing about the cult. They always have to lure you in
oh,
something, not the
oh,
main thing, because if they tell
Oh,
you what this is about, you're not going to go, right? So just
oh, okay, wow. But thankfully, you were well. You're here today. That means you didn't
I'm
get
here.
hurt. That was like
I was
that.
not
It sounded
assassinated
like
in Mexico by
yeah,
the cartel
it's
timeshare
the cartel.
organization.
Yeah, right. Wow. But yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, yeah, that I would avoid if I ever go. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and then when I got home, I did some research on timeshares, and I found out
Oh,
about it, and it's,
so it's
it's
kind of a
just,
known kind of
yeah,
scam thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
I did not thank God because I didn't believe in Him at the time, but
Oh, okay.
but I
Yeah.
was, but I dodged the bullet. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, and talking about God, if you don't mind me, maybe how did you end up converting then? I know that Tejas told me too. You converted
Yeah.
from being atheist. Yeah, that part maybe you can update me with your story, or the audience
Well,
too.
the very short summary of this, with the time we have, is that I
Yeah.
took an interest in studying
Oh,
the early days of the church.
oh,
And after studying this, and after understanding the historical method, and understanding, like, first of all, how I should approach those things to begin with,
oh,
I came to the conclusion that every single thing, so I 40-50% of the things that I learned at this time were new. I've never heard of them before. The other
oh,
50% were things that I knew. I just could see them in a different light after getting the other 50%. But the conclusion that I had after, let's say, 2 years of studying this out of interest, because I love the Roman Empire and I love studying
oh,
history,
ah,
the conclusion that I came to is that the resurrection of Jesus was real. It did happen. It
oh,
was an event in history,
okay.
and people who die tend to stay dead. Again, this is a super short story, right? Like, I know
Yeah,
many people who died; they're all still dead,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I came to believe that you can find alternative explanations for all of those things around that subject
Mm-hmm,
individually. So, for
mm-hmm.
example, the apostles all describe Jesus and describe the resurrection. It could be a mass hallucination. So, like, you start as a skeptic, you find
Mm-hmm.
alternative explanations for almost everything.
That's right.
But I could not find, after the more I studied, I could no longer find a good explanation for everything at the same time. So
Oh,
the only thing for me that explained the facts,
mm-hmm.
all of the evidence put together, was that Jesus rose from the dead. And the moment I came to accept that, it's what I remember telling my wife. I this has consequences, right? Just I can't just not do anything about it. Just we have
Oh,
to.
okay.
And then my journey I started my journey to decide. At that point, I was convinced that the resurrection of Jesus was real. So
Oh,
I think you
okay.
could fairly call me a Christian. And then I went into this year-long journey to decide which of the many Protestant churches I would join.
Oh,
And then I decided to, again, after more studying and understanding, I came to believe that the Catholic Church
oh,
is the only thing that I could possibly join, and here I am.
oh, oh, that's how. Okay. Yeah. Thank you
Yeah,
for the quick version. Yeah. Yeah.
quick
Okay.
version.
You're a quick version. I see. Even though,
Yeah.
well, you were born. Yeah. Yeah.
Very different than growing up with that. It's just for
Mm,
me, it was a
okay.
completely different story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I appreciate too. Sometimes I also wonder because you also asked me during the course of our conversation earlier, how did I ever kind of refute it, right? This thing, I don't think I ever really rebel against it, but do recall asking my mother, what if all these things were not true? I think I remember asking my mom, and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. But my mom, like I said, she was really faith filled too. I think she knew her problems and everything, but her faith was unwavering this whole time. I really think she had a big influence on me. It's just like strengthening my faith and not like faltering, so to speak. Yeah, and I see her too being so strong. That really helped, I think. So yeah, I think she kind of like in her heart she truly believed. I think that's what I could sense. So yeah, so. But yeah, that is very interesting to see what everybody's faith journeys are like. I think it's important to know. So
Did you ever get this interesting understanding, like the facts, the history, like what happened?
yeah.
Because look, I remember thinking again as a teenager
Hmm.
that and this was in this new age phase, right? Because look,
Yeah.
the reality of this is that after Jesus, you can't really have a religion without having Jesus there somewhere. Like
Yeah.
even the Muslims have a place for
Yeah.
Jesus. Like
For Jesus.
they claim Jesus is one of their prophets, and
Prophet. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, everybody else, like Jehovah's Witness, etc., all kinds of cults, they have to put Jesus there somehow
Hmm.
because the importance, which some
Hmm.
people consider an evidence in itself. I'm not swayed by this evidence too much, but
Yeah.
like how this carpenter's son could have this
Yeah.
amount of influence in the world 2,000 years later, and like, right,
Yes.
it is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I don't. Again, I'm not particularly swayed by this as evidence of anything, but
Hmm.
it is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And so everybody has to have Jesus there somewhere. So like this cult thing that I was a part of, they talked a lot about Jesus, but Jesus was seen as a spirit that was sent, one of many people in this like council of sages that
Oh,
were enlightened by this very knowledge that you're going to receive, right?
wow. Yeah.
Which is again a load of nonsense. And
Yeah.
but I remember thinking very distinctively that look, even if this is all false, like Jesus is a archetype. It's something that like it's good for you. It teaches you
Oh, yeah.
great
Yeah.
lessons.
That's right.
So right, so it doesn't have to be true to be like effective. And
Mhm.
oh, I buy none of that today. Like none of that. For me, like in fact, the funny part is that as an atheist, I was always gung ho on. I'm an atheist. I go where the evidence leads. I would change my
Oh,
mind at any point. But one of the questions that a Catholic friend of mine asked me
mm,
that I wasn't able to answer was what is the evidence that you would require? Like I showed you all of this evidence. It was a person that was very at the tail end of this. I was talking to him a lot.
yeah.
I showed you all of this evidence for Jesus, and you still don't believe. If
Mm,
you claim that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, fine. So what is the evidence? What do you want to see? What is the thing that you want to see? And what I ended up understanding is that like honestly, like there wasn't any. I was already coming from the presupposition that
oh,
miracles are impossible, the world is a material place, there's none of that, this is all false. Nothing could change my mind. So I mean, if you have the assumption that God is
mhm.
not real, there is no God, then you're going to find explanations for all of those things, but that's an assumption.
Mm, that's it.
And today I actually have a falsifiable belief. So it's funny because I was all about I don't believe in God because that's not falsifiable, right? It's not something you
Mm,
can
yeah,
test.
that's right.
But today I have a falsifiable belief because if you show me tomorrow the bones, like somebody goes dig an
Mm,
archaeological dig in Israel, and
yeah.
they find a tomb with the bones in it,
Yeah.
and some inscription, Jesus of Nazareth, etc. Blah blah blah. Why would I be a Christian?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If he never rose from the dead, why
That's
would I
right.
believe in
Yeah.
this? And
That's
this
good.
would, like a lot of people say, I mean, I would be a Christian no matter what. Like I would not. Like for me, this
Mm,
is essentially comes from the resurrection. If the
mm.
resurrection never happened, then I'm wasting my time
So
here.
you're
As
wasting your
Saint
time.
Paul,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's true. That's true. I find folks like yourself are very interesting. It's good to be questioning and then needing some references. And in fact, you asked me too if I was ever interested in the history. I have to say that I think in the beginning of my faith journey, I wasn't looking so much into that part for some reason. But the thing is, though, as I grow older, I'm actually very interested now in knowing, wanting to know what happened, right, throughout history, all the like the apostles and going through, from the Holy Land. I think that area that they moved to Rome and all that, and St.
Mm-hmm.
Paul spreading gospel all the way, to Greece or something, to Turkey, all that. So I'm actually very interested in it too. But it's interesting to me. I find folks like yourself is also good. We wanted to have more evidence to prove it. But on the other hand, it gets to a point that not everything can be proved easily, right?
Yeah.
All that. So, and rather than doing that, I really, and that's where again, it's like what you call like the mystery comes in, and then your faith will have to come to be asking God to help you solve this in your mind. So then it's kind of, it doesn't take too much energy, any more energy. There are more things we need to be doing. And so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so to me, I feel like this is time I turn to God for answers, for guidance. I think that's what I would do. I would always do. So I really turn to the one who created me to look for answers, and he always does give me some answers. Yeah, may not be what the world is looking for, but I think is often is a very good answers too. So yeah, it is what I go after. So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So
Mary, it was a great pleasure having you today here. I understand you need to go now to
yeah,
your adoration.
yeah,
Uh, we
that's
have
right.
we have, we have hours we have hours here on Friday in the middle of the day,
Oh,
but
okay, cool. Yeah,
I want to do that a lot more as well.
yeah. Please
Over
do.
over time, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Good. 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 And I will keep you in my prayers when I go to adoration now.
Likewise.
So yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much again for the opportunities. I enjoy getting to know you, getting to know how you think and the faith journey you have had. So yeah. Thank
It,
you.
it, it was a pleasure having you as a guest. Keep in touch. We'll see
Yes.
you on Twitter, I guess.
Twitter. Yeah. And maybe at a conference somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right, Mary.
All right.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
great day.
you.
Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye. Bye.